Blake is one of the best guitar players I've ever met. Come on, make some noise for Blake. So if you don't know, last time I was here, I said he was the most annoying person that I've met at Fuse, and I want to formally apologize because that is not true at all. He's so cool. But hey, it's so cool to be up here, and we're gonna do like a 2-part series, Christmas series called At Just the Right Time. And I'm one of those people that I love when I see people taking notes. So if you love to take notes, or if you want to whip out your phone and take notes along as I'm talking, that would be great. If you could post that on your story, that would be so cool. We'll repost that, and then, yeah, you might get a gift. I don't know, maybe not, maybe. I don't know, we'll see. But when I was here last week, I kind of talked for a little bit about how I was a rock climbing instructor. Now, I was a rock climbing instructor for a couple of years, and I remember one time I was working, and it was a really long shift, and afterwards I was supposed to be at the surprise party. And I wanted to get to this surprise party really early, so I wanted to make sure I could set up, making sure that my friend was like totally blown away, and it was going to be an amazing thing. So right before I left, I was done with work, I get a text from a friend and a coworker, and he said, "Yo, man, can you please stay a little bit longer, like 15, 20 minutes, because I'm running late. It would really help me out." And I had two options at that point. Either one, just kind of like pretend like I didn't see the message and be like, "Sorry, bro, I'm out, see you, peace." Or do what kind of I felt like God was nudging me to do. Is like, "Hey, just stay a little bit extra. It's okay. You'll be fine. The party will get set up. It'll be fine." And so I'm like, "Fine, I'll do it." So I stayed for like 15, 20 minutes. The coworker came, he was like, "Thanks, bro," and I'm like, "Whatever." And I book it to my car, I try to start my car, and then my car wouldn't start. So I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me." So I'm like, now I'm gonna be late. I don't wanna be late. And so I'm trying to start this car, and then my friend, my coworker, helped jump it with me, and he was like, didn't know what he was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm really bad with cars. I had no idea what I was doing. And so I'm like freaking out. Finally, we get the thing to start. I hit the road. And now, here's the deal about me. Up front, you got to know this about me. There's two things that I despise. Number one is being late. I hate being late. I love to be early, on time. That's just how I roll. And second, I hate traffic. I despise traffic. I despise traffic so much that when I was watching Infinity War, I was rooting for Thanos. Because I was like, hey, if he snaps and half the population's gone, that means no more traffic. I was for Thanos. I was riding with Thanos. I'm joking, guys. That was a joke. Listen, but I hate traffic. And I was hitting this traffic, and I'm like, man, I'm really going to be late now. I don't like being late. And so I'm like driving on the curb. I'm like, I gotta go. And I gotta be my friend there. Let's just say my friend's name was Matt. And so I had to beat Matt before I could ruin the surprise. And so I pull up to my friend's house, and then Matt pulls up at the same time. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And so I like get out of my car, and Matt like has no idea what's going on, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh man, I was just in the neighborhood, like I was hunting deer and stuff." And I'm like, "You're in New York, you don't hunt deer." I'm like, "I know, I'm just in the neighborhood, I don't know." And then I ruined the surprise party for him, and then everybody made fun of me the entire night. And I'm like, God, why? The whole party, I was like, God, you told me to stay, and all of a sudden, all this stuff was happening, and I was late to the party. God, what was going on? I had a good plan, and you ruined it. God, what are you doing? You ever felt that way? You ever felt that way about God? Like, God, what are you doing? God, what is going on in my life? God, like, what direction are you taking me? Like, my life is a mess right now. My life is complicated. God, what are you up to? What are you doing? Are you there? What's going on? You ever have expectations turn into frustrations? Like, God, I had a good thing going, and it feels like you just abandoned me. You've given up on me. I feel like we feel this at a personal level. Some of you guys are sick right now, and you're like, God, I thought bodies were supposed to be healthy. What are you doing? Maybe your home life is really crazy right now, and you're afraid to go home because your parents don't treat you right. Your dad doesn't even realize you're home. He ignores you. You get stepped on in your family. And you're like, God, what are you doing? And maybe if you're real honest with yourself, that's why you're not a Christian here tonight. That's why you're not into this God stuff, is because your life's a mess. Your life is real complicated. Your life isn't simple. And you're like, man, if I was driving this car, like I would get us to the right direction. And I just feel like God is driving this car and I don't know where he's going. Life's complicated, isn't it? And you know what? I think about this every Christmas. Merry Christmas. I literally think about this every Christmas. Because if you've ever read the Nativity story, it's a mess. It's so complicated. You ever think about Joseph? Joseph's knocking on these doors, trying to find a place so that Mary, who has a baby, can just sleep at night. And he's traveling. Like, how many times does he have to knock until he just goes berserk? And he's like, God, what are you doing? Like, can you dispatch an angel to just tell this innkeeper, hey, let me in? How many knocks until he starts complaining? And what about Mary? How many bumps on a donkey ride until she's like, okay, God, I could get supernaturally impregnated, but I can't get supernaturally expedited to Bethlehem. Like, come on. What does a girl got to do to get medallion status? I mean, what is going on? Why is this happening? Why is it so complicated? I think about this all the time. You know, for me personally, I shared it last month that I was an artist, I was a musician, and I was traveling and touring, and I felt like God called me into ministry, and I took that step of faith, and I felt like God was speaking to me. I felt so close to God. I was like, God, this is amazing. I am doing the right thing, and I'm going to change the world. This is crazy. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to see people who are far from Christ find life and get radically changed. I was so excited until when I made that step, I felt like God was silent. All of a sudden, the GPS on my phone just shut off. And I'm like, God, I need some direction. I need to know where I'm going. You ever felt that way? Because I do. And it's complicated. And I remember one time, I was just sitting in my car, super frustrated about where my life was and just complaining. And I'm like, God, is there a plan? Like, is there a plan to all this? Or am I just floating? Like, I got ejected from among us, like, just like floating and like, wee. Or is there a plan? Is there a purpose to this pain that I'm feeling? Is there logic to this timing? Is there a purpose in the chaos? And in the middle of Mary and Joseph's story is so interesting. We see Mary and Joseph have a baby named Jesus. And they are in this temple, and they're going and giving an offering that they're supposed to do at this time. And then this dude kind of shows up out of nowhere, this guy named Simone. And he shows up into the temple, and he looks at baby Jesus, and he grabs baby Jesus. And he looks at baby Jesus, and he says something so profound that I think will help us here tonight. He says this, it's on the screens. Lord, now you're letting your servant depart in peace. I can leave and I'm good. Because according to your word, for my eyes have seen your salvation, that you have prepared in the presence of all people, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for the glory to your people Israel. What is he saying? He has got clarity in the middle of the chaos. And his perspective started to give him peace. When you get perspective, you get peace. He was like, hey, I can leave in peace. I'm good. Because why? Because he started to see what God was doing. He looked at baby Jesus, and for some reason, he started to see what God was up to. And I want you tonight, and this is why this talk matters, is because I want to talk to you tonight about God's perspective. Because when we get God's perspective and we get God's priorities, that can help us have peace. Because when we have priorities on his story, on what's going on with him, we might understand what's going on in our story. Because if we understand the why behind Christmas, the why of Christmas, we can understand maybe why our life is complicated, why our life is kind of dark and broken. But to do that, to understand the why of Christmas, we need to go back to the beginning of the movie, because Christmas is in the middle of the movie. And I can't just start talking about the middle of the movie. We have to go back to the beginning of the movie. So we're going to give a 4,000-year head start in just a couple minutes. So Adam and Eve, God created everything good. Adam and Eve was chilling until they decided to take things into their own hands, and they walked away from God. And God, in his mourning, says, everything is broken because of you. It's the great tragedy of Genesis 3. You feel dislocated from the heavens. You feel dislocated from this earth. It's because you are. We're not connected to God like we should be. But in our rebellion, in humanity's rebellion, God provides hope. He says, I'm going to send the boy to crush the head of the serpent. And so Eve has a boy named Cain. And Cain means I got one. Eve is so excited. Maybe this is the boy that's going to restore things. But then she has another child named Abel. Abel means vanity. And the reason why she called him vanity is because she's like, man, these boys are a mess. It's because people are a mess. And generations down, people are wondering, when is that boy coming? And then finally Noah shows up, and Noah means rest. And the father's like, maybe Noah could be the person, can be that boy that God has promised, but he wasn't. And so we see in Genesis 1, everything is good. Then Genesis 3, something goes wrong. Evil enters into the world. And 4 and 5, it just gets worse. It gets even more complicated. And in Genesis 6, we see God wanting to restore things back to their original intent. And he tries to do that, but people are still people, and people rebel again. And so God, what he does in his mercy, he scatters the people. And in Genesis 12, we see the story, we see the movie narrow in on one person, and his name's Abraham. And this is what God says to Abraham. He says this. Now, the Lord said to Abraham, go from your country and go in your father's house to the land that I will show you. There's a land that I want you to be at. And I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. And you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. And Abraham, being 75 years old, believes and trusts God, and he goes. And so I got a picture up on the screen that I want to show you guys. Picture of a map. You see this picture, you didn't think you'd be in social studies, huh? But we're in social studies. So you see that arrow? Abraham was right in the beginning of that arrow. And God calls him to go along the Fertile Crescent. Remember that class? Fertile Crescent, right? Back in history. You're shaking your head. No, you got to read your textbook. No, I'm joking. You don't have. I mean, you should. He's going on the Fertile Crescent, and God wants him there in that land. And so Abraham then has a boy named Isaac. Isaac has Jacob. Jacob gets his name changed after he meets God, a crazy encounter with God, to Israel. Israel then has 12 boys. 11 of those boys hate one of the brothers named Joey. That's what happens when you have 12 brothers. Someone's going to hate someone. And so what they do is they sell him to slavery. They sell little Joey into slavery, which you do when you have 12 brothers. You just sell the other one into slavery. And so with that, he's a prisoner in Egypt. You remember that? Egypt, the great nation, powerful nation. He is a prisoner. All of a sudden, after being a prisoner, he becomes second in command. And there was a time where the brothers had to get food, and there was a famine in the land. And his brother, little Joey, is now second in command. And instead of striking them, maybe throwing these brothers into prison, he forgives them. And that's really important because those 12 brothers then become 12 tribes. Those tribes become one nation. God is continuing to be faithful. This is the story. This is the plan. And God's caring about this land. But then the problem with this situation is Egypt's like, okay, these people are crazy and they're growing into a nation. We need to make them slaves. And for 400 years, they become slaves. But God's still faithful. He rises up Moses, right? You guys know this. Moses leads the people out of Egypt to the promised land, but he doesn't get in. His protege, Joshua, he leads them into the nation, into this land. And this land is super, super important that we have up in the screen. And while they're chilling in this land, these people, this nation continues to rebel against God. There's people that are saying, hey, you have to turn, you have to repent, you have to trust God. But the people, they just do what is right in their own eyes. And they continue to screw things up. And all of a sudden, the nation becomes two kingdoms, a northern, southern kingdom. And this is important. Follow along with me. Northern, southern kingdom. The northern kingdom gets wiped out by the Assyrians. This is history. The southern kingdom gets kidnapped by Babylon, and they become exiles. But for some reason, God is still really concerned about that land and is promising this nation, hey, you will have that land. The entire Old Testament, God is concerned about a boy and a land. That's where we are in the movie. Following along? But then the movie continues to our history books. What is God up to? Well, now our history books start in Philip led a great nation called Macedonia. And Macedonia, Philip had a son named Alex, called Alex the Great. Remember that class in social studies, Alexander the Great? What he did is he conquered the known world. And this is super important. The reason why he conquered the known world and the reason why it was so important is because he established something that's never happened before, a Greek language. Now, everybody can talk one language. It's never really been done before in the history of the world. Everyone can communicate with one language. Then all of a sudden, Romans take over. And what is Romans known for? Their roads, right? And now because of Julius Caesar in 27 BC says, hey, peace. You can go and travel. Now people can now travel. Never been happened before. The whole entire known world, that world just got really small. Eastern Europe, Western Europe, North Africa, Asia got really small because Roman roads and because people are doing business and people are traveling. What are you getting to, Anthony? I don't understand. What is the point of all this? This is where this piece of land gets interesting. You could show the third slide, the third picture. That piece of land gets really interesting because if you could tell, that's central to the known world at the time. You can, from Africa, go to there easy, Europe, Asia. And it's at this time, in that piece of land, in this moment of history, God is really concerned with sending his monotheistic people on that property. He comes to a little teenage girl. And he says, I know you got your wedding plans, but you're going to have to cancel them because you're going to have a child. And I know that's going to be crazy, and I know that's going to be chaotic, but you can name him Emmanuel, God with us. You can name him Jesus, Lord saves. And what Galatians says is that the fullness of time, God sent forth his son. God orchestrated all of history for this moment right here, for Christmas. And so Jesus grows up. He doesn't leave that little piece of land. And Jesus grows up, and he's doing things that's never been done before. And he's got all this religious power and authority. And he knows all the rules, but yet he's so gentle. Children love to play with him. And he's so gracious that he'll go up to anybody no matter how many times they've broken God's law. And then Luke tells us later on that Jesus turns his face towards Jerusalem, which means peace, shalom. And while he turns his face towards that city, God put his holy city amongst the center of the known world. And Jesus, the Prince of Peace, came to purchase our peace. Do you see it? At just the right time, Christ came. And that's what Paul says in Romans. At just the right time, Christ died for us. So why did Jesus come? Why do we celebrate Christmas? It's for our salvation. It's to rescue you and me. See, Romans says that we were powerless, that we were lost, that we didn't have any purpose. And but Christ came and died for us. We were lost and stranded with no purpose and with no meaning, but Christ came and died for us. See, we weren't just a little misadjusted. We didn't just need some more rules. We didn't need some behavior modification. No, we were dead. We were lost. We were far gone. But Jesus came towards us. That's why Jesus is so different than any other philosophy, any other religion, because everything else tries to teach you and throw at you that, hey, you need to do this. You need to be a better person, and then maybe you can earn God's favor. But the crazy thing about Jesus is he came towards you while you were broken, while you were messed up, at just the right time. So why did Jesus come? For salvation. Why this timing? For proclamation. Simeon says, for my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all the nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles. Do you know what the Gentiles were? Gentiles means ethnos, or nations, pretty much everybody other than the Jewish people, religious people at the time. And you know what the religious people called the Gentiles? Far gone, far off. And a lot of you probably in this room feel like you're too far gone, that you're too broken, that you're too messed up. That, man, Anthony, if you knew what I did last night, or if you know what I've done, then, man, God wouldn't love me. But Jesus is a light to you in your darkness, in your confusion, in your mental health, in your cloud and the thing you're walking through. Jesus is your light. He's a light for the people that feel too far gone. That's who he is. And you might be saying, Anthony, my life is too complex. Why all the complexity? Why the Bible? Why all this religious, all these stories? Why make everything so complicated? But Galatians 4 says this, but when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his son, born of a woman. What does that mean? That he was just like you and me. Born under the law. What does that mean? He had all the expectations to be holy, to do what is right, to redeem those underneath the law. See, Jesus dealt with your complexities. He went and took it all on himself to redeem you, to buy you back. Every inconvenience of the incarnation was for your redemption. Every little thing that you've went through, Jesus has went through. That's what that means. Because he was poor for our sake, because we were poor. He was betrayed by his friends because we've been betrayed by our friends. He was abandoned by the Father, his own Father, because we were abandoned. And Jesus has come to experience all that for you. So as we wrap up, what is God's priority? God's priority is for you. It's for your salvation, so that you know him. God will move all of history so that he can know you. Isn't that crazy? So I don't know the details of your story. I don't know the complexities of your story. But God will move all of history so that he can know you and he can get your attention. One last story as we wrap up here tonight, and the band could come up. I was talking with one of my friends, and he was talking to me about a conversation that he had with his dad. It was the first spiritual conversation he ever had with his dad. And he's talking, and his dad was going through a lot of hard things, and just, you name it, he was going through it, health issues, financial issues. And his dad just turned to him and said, hey, is there a plan to all this? Is there a purpose to all this? Not just like a plan for me and my stuff, but like, is there a plan in general? And my friend didn't know what to do at the time. My friend was really confused. He didn't know what to say. And he asked God to say something. And I want to read it because I don't want to get it wrong, and it's so powerful. He says, Dad, I think God wants everyone to know him. So he will give you whatever he needs to give you. And he will take whatever he needs to take from you to get your attention because he wants you. So I don't know your story. I don't know the complexities of it. But God will move in the complexities for his main priority, which is to get to know you. And so my last question here tonight is, do you know him? Do you know him? Not just intellectually, but in the heart. Do you know him? Because God will do all these crazy things. God will take on a lot of burdens. God will walk through what you're walking through so that you can know him, so that you can have a relationship with him, and so that you can love him. And so today could be the day where you make a decision to know him. And God, in his love and his mercy, came for you. And all you have to do is start a conversation. Is talk to him. And so this is why I love Fuse, is because we're going to have an opportunity in the last song. If you want to get to know your maker, if you want to get to know the God who created you, who's insanely in love with you, that will move all and orchestrate history to get to know you, you can. You have the opportunity right now. You're not too broken. You're not too messed up. I don't care what culture says. I don't care what you think the church says. I don't care if you think that all these people, man, they're just judging me and I'm in here. No, God loves you. God pursues you. The reason why you're here tonight is to hear the message that there is hope and you can have purpose if you put your trust in Jesus. Do you know him? Because there's a reason for the pain. There's logic to the timing. God will move all of history so that he can know you.